Hi, I'm Leon Papkoff, CEO of Design Reactor. I'm here with Mitch McCoy, Vice President of Strategic Accounts. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting new topic called responsive design. A lot of companies out there, corporations, SMBs out there, are trying to understand what is responsive design really about, how does it help me, and why do I need it?
Yep, it's a very hot topic. What the heck is it and why do I need it?
That's right. So we're going to go through a couple slides, kind of explain some of the fundamental elements of it. We're going to dive in a little bit technically, and then we're going to get into some examples and how the industry is kind of laying this out, how they're actually being challenged with this. It's a really great new approach with how you can actually respond to your audience, make it a lot easier for your audience.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and dive into this. Today what we're seeing around responsive design is there's some key benefits to it today. So let's walk you through those. It really is about an enhanced customer experience. And this is really about having responsive design work across multiple devices. So what a lot of people are experiencing today is a lot of internet traffic. When you go to a site like cisco.com, for example, people are going to these sites on multiple devices today. So they're going to it on iPhones, on Androids, on iPads. And the challenge is a lot of times sites today don't work on these devices. They're built in older technologies, or they don't actually, the layout doesn't work well, or the links are really, really small and your big finger can't actually click on them. So what responsive design does is it actually resizes it responsibly for those devices and changes the sizes of navigations, makes it easier to actually fit on the screen itself.
Yeah, and this is why this is such a hot topic. If you think about the proliferation of mobile devices, the way people access, like you were talking about, not just mobile devices, but still desktops and laptops, they're all shapes and all sizes,
That's
and
right.
they're from all around the world. So that customer experience has changed. No longer does that old website work like it used to.
That's right.
But you want that customer experience to still be good. So in order to do that, you need to adapt to the people on how they want to access
That's
your
right.
content.
And it's really important today because, again, so many devices are out there that they're actually measuring, a lot of analysts are measuring today, that over 50% of the traffic worldwide now is coming in from a mobile device. So if your website today doesn't have responsive design, you really need to think about adding that into the marketing mix so that it's enabled for that.
Very important.
So that's really about an enhanced customer experience. Enriched scalability, again, is about how it can scale on these different devices. So it's very similar to the experience itself, but it's how do you scale this? How do you make it one code base? How do you actually scale it internally and externally so it's easier for your audience to grab a hold of? One of the other elements is a unified code base. So one of the great things about responsive design is that you have one code base for all the devices itself. So you're not having to redesign this or re-engineering it for the different screen sizes. You're actually dealing with one set of code for all the devices. So that's a key benefit.
That's a very important message. The last thing you want to do is end up with different code bases and have to keep all of these in sync when you're talking about the type of content and areas that a corporation has to typically deal with.
That's right.
That is a major challenge. Don't get into that.
Right, exactly. And then the other is improved SEO performance. And that's a really important aspect, as we all know. One of the things that it does is when you have your CSS file for that one code base, you're able to put a lot more elements in about what the site is about, what the different divs and different positions and different positioning statements and different areas, feature sets in the site. So it actually increases your overall SEO performance and scales it out to all the search engines. It actually makes it a lot easier for search engines to find key materials within the site itself.
Yeah, and this is like a little hidden gem, a little surprise you didn't expect from responsive design. There's
That's right.
Added benefit that marketers love.
Yeah, and also, as everyone knows how search engines work today, because it is accessible now on more devices, those links get clicked on more, which makes them more relevant in search engines. And that's another reason why the SEO performance actually goes through the roof, makes your site, your corporate site, more relevant on search engines.
Great point.
So a lot of key benefits to responsive design. Let's go into this a little bit deeper now. Okay, so one of the first main methodologies, and this is really a difference in how the industry has evolved with this, is a lot of responsive design now is getting into what they call the fluid grid system. And this is about key elements within the page itself. Just like this graphic shows, is that it takes key elements, it actually has a fluid approach to it. So everything is broken down by percentages now. Where in the past, a lot of the way that websites were developed were actually broken out into were broken down into percentage-based designs, which were specifically around key pixels, around tables, around table structures. And they didn't have this fluid grid approach. Everything now is in a percentage-based environment.
Nice, very nice. I think this is a great little visual here because I can see that I have a layout, and this layout's the same, but my image size is changing.
Yeah.
And here, not only are my image sizes changing, but now my layout's changing as well.
Right, and we're gonna get into that specifically. It's a great comment here, but you can see that when we're doing wireframes themselves, we look a lot about how they'll actually change. Now, to further illustrate our example today, we're gonna be using a new website that we've created for Design Reactor. This website's actually launching this week for us. And we're gonna use this as an example. So a lot of times, your design team will create a wonderful design, or your agency will create a wonderful design. The next step is a lot of times a wireframe is created prior to the design, and a lot of times you're looking at the specific wireframes and dividing different elements of that page out into different elements within a wireframe. Now, one of the things that we've all seen from a traditional process in creating a website is wireframes are created in the beginning, but a lot of times engineers aren't given exposure to wireframes. They usually are at the end of the training where they're given the final designs for the site and they're like, okay, now engineer the site.
Give me the PSD file and let me go to work.
Exactly. And that's a big challenge for engineers because they're just given the final things and then they have to deal with it. Now, having engineers involved in the beginning of the process, having them involved at the wireframe level, actually makes it a lot easier for them to understand how to treat different elements of the page and actually make these into divs and think about changing the sizes, realigning these different divs, adjusting them for the different sizes of the screen. So let me break that down a little bit further for you.
Yeah, so the wireframes are becoming a critical stage now.
That's right.
For the development
Absolutely,
process.
yeah. So wireframes are definitely a critical element of any website design process, and more critical now when you're going into responsive design. So you'll see here, one of the things that we've done is broken this down into kind of a standard desktop, laptop. We have more of a tablet size, which would be more like an iPad, and then we have the phone size. And you'll see all of our key divs are actually allocated for here. But you can see the difference between the laptop size and the phone size is that what we're doing now is not only are we changing the percentage of them, making them smaller, but we're also stacking them differently.
Nice.
And as you get into mobile devices, you'll notice every mobile device and every responsive design website that runs on a mobile device, there's a lot of scroll. So you're scrolling around up and down to find key elements. And that's why this stacking technique comes very handy. So I'm going to show you some more specific examples.
Okay.
Okay, great. So this is, again, the website we're using as an example, but you can see what it looks like on a laptop or like a larger desktop machine. You can see what it looks like on an iPad, and then you can see what it looks like on an iPhone. And we're really going to start looking at how we're changing the percentage size of these divs and then how we're lining them up differently. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go back to the wireframes, and we're going to look at specifically these key elements. And we're going to talk about this concept called media queries. Now, media query is think of it as like a boundary. And with this website, and every website can be different, but you can build in multiple media queries on however you want to change the responsive design of the site.
Okay.
Everything in between these media queries is just a percentage of the same layout.
Gotcha.
Okay, so if I'm between 980 pixels all the way out, it's just going to extend or decline that percentage within that media query. If I look at anything below 980, which is 979 to 481, it's going to be a percentage of. However, we've now changed the alignment of the content itself. So you can see these feature 1 and feature 2 now is stacked. and connect 1, connect 2, connect 3 is still horizontally laid out, but we're changing the layout a little bit while we're also changing the percentage. And you see that more so below 480 pixels. You're actually stacking everything now, but you're also changing the percentage size. And changing the percentage size comes down to key images and key areas within the site itself.
Great.
Any questions here?
No, I think that's a nice layout here, nice explanation.
Great. So let me get into a little bit deeper. You can see that the way we've done the media queries here, and this again is all one CSS file. So it aligns that really nicely, but it breaks us down into those different pixels, and it lets us understand exactly what a media query is about. And again, talking about the percentage within the media query is a very important element to think about. And again, this is why it's so important to bring engineers in at the beginning of the process, during the wireframe process, because a lot of times, and I'll show you an example here in a second, a lot of times you're going to see that graphical elements need to change in size. One of the key things that I always talk about is when you're at the desktop size, keep in mind that users are using a mouse to click on things. And the mouse cursor is much smaller than your finger is when you're on a phone device.
Absolutely.
And so if you have links that are very close together on a phone device, a lot of times you're actually going to click on the wrong link. So you want to think about this within your responsive design, and that's why, again, it's important to bring in these engineers in the very beginning.
Right, it's like who of us hasn't been on a mobile application or a mobile experience and you're clicking on something and you keep hitting the wrong link, the wrong button, very frustrating.
Exactly.
So that element in the design stage here is critical in responsive design.
So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out of this PowerPoint. I'm going to go into the specific example of the site we have here and give everyone an idea of what we're looking at here. This is an example of the site. It's actually live here. I can show you exactly how this works, but you can see all the different elements that we talked about in the site, the key areas, where the divs are located. If we scroll down, you'll see that we have our featured elements, which are laid out horizontally in this screen size, and then we have 3 contact areas or connect areas, which are focused around our social media exposure, and they're laid out in a horizontal fashion as well. Now, to really illustrate how this changes, what I'm going to do is just grab the corner of my browser here and adjust it, and that kind of gives you an idea of how it's going to look on an iPad or how it's going to look on an iPhone. And the smaller the screen gets, we're going to see key elements actually changing in real time. So as I start to decline the size of the screen, one of the things you're going to see is the actual image size itself will start to adjust. You see how it's starting to adjust there in real time, Mitch?
Fantastic.
Elements are changing by each percentage level in real time. Now, one of the other key things you're going to see is you're going to see elements start to disappear or restack themselves. So let me pause here and see if anything has restacked itself. It hasn't. So that means we're still within one media query, which we're just changing the percentage of. So let's go ahead and continue. Okay, right there, you notice the phone number went away. Now that's because we want to hide that at a certain level, because as you can see there, it starts to get bunched with the main nav. Other than that, we're still changing the size of things. But however, at the bottom here, now we're stacking these 3 elements as opposed to horizontally laying them out.
There you go.
Okay? Now I'm going to continue to decrease the size till we break the pane of another media query. And at this level, now we're really at a, let me go ahead and move this out of the way. Now we're really at the level of what would be like on a standard phone size. And you can see here that the logo's smaller, the promos are smaller, and what we've done is just shrunk the size of these promos down. Everything's still functional. So I can still click through different promos here. The positioning copy is the same. The featured work is laid out. Now it's stacked, just as I showed you in the wireframe before. The other key elements, everything is still very functional now. One of the other key elements, and this is where navigation is really important. You may have noticed that our navigation was horizontally spread here. Now there's this universal navigation button. So just to illustrate that, when we're here, it's horizontal. When you're on the phone size, it's bigger. And that's because, again, I'm not gonna have my mouse to use. I'm gonna be using my finger, and so I can click on that. Now I can see the key elements that are a lot easier to click on with my finger now. And I can see other key elements that are easy to click on here. And these are really important when you're dealing with your finger instead of a mouse. That makes it a lot easier to access key content specifically there.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing here, there's something very interesting. There's a couple parts of this. There's not just how to program this, because that in itself is quite an undertaking.
Right.
You really have to know what you're doing when you start programming this, because you want it to be a smooth experience.
That's right.
But the second part is just from a design and UX experience. You know, how do you rearrange, when to rearrange, when to stack?
Right.
You know, how's it going to be, what's that experience going to be like on the iPad?
Yep.
What's that experience going to be like on an iPhone?
That's right.
That's another critical part of this responsive design.
Right. Exactly right. And that's what's so important. And by the way, it's not just about the homepage. So let me give you one example. If I go under our service area, and you see the way the navigation is, and I go into one of our key areas like mobile, and that page loads here, you'll see that, again, the promos are laid out a certain way, and we have positioning copy, and then below that we actually have another video and some content, because we're using a content marketing methodology on the site.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that there's some key elements like the way that we're using video and doing those things. So this is all pretty standard for a laptop or desktop. Now let me show you how this changes in a responsive format. And again, it's another very important element, because over 50% of our traffic is going to come in on a mobile device. You want things like video to work properly. You want all those key elements. So now, when I actually decrease this, again, we have the promo that's smaller, we have nav that's easier, our positioning copy is very easy. Now we're stacking the key features that we do under that. We have our what's trending area, and now the content's also easier. Nice. If I were to click on the content itself, you'll see that up above here, we actually have this content gated, which makes it really easy to actually access the content. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my information here. And it should refresh here. There you go. And now you can see that video content is real easy to see in a small screen format, which is really great and easy to be able to access. You can still share it. So essentially what we've done here is we've made the whole site responsively act for any type of device. And that's really what the core value of responsive design is about.
This is really great work. Really smart.
So that's all we have today. I definitely want to invite you guys to give us a call, contact us on our website, but we'd love to talk to you about how to make your website be responsive so you can actually reach your entire audience. Thanks again. We'll look forward to talking to you.